Hey guys, tonight, we slide softly into a world of drifting smoke, lacquered scabbards, and velvet whispers of sandalwood in the air. You're not picking up a blade, not yet. Instead, you're walking barefoot on tatami mats, through a house so quiet, even your breath feels like a guest. Shadows cling to the corners like sleepy cats, and something invisible but unmistakable hangs in the air incense. Warm, sweet, a little peppery. Maybe with a whiff of something floral, hiding behind the smoke. That's not decoration. That's power. That's samurai. Yes, you're in feudal Japan. And yes, you probably won't survive this if you forget to bow at the right angle, or misjudge which sandal goes where. Don't worry, you smell fine. For now. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you all are listening from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You slide open a door carved with waves and koi. Inside, a young warrior kneels. His armor lies neatly beside him, not on him. Instead of oiling his sword, he's waving a small fan over a dish of glowing coals. Carefully balanced on top, a chip of agarwood slowly darkens curls at the edges and begins to release a ribbon of smoke that smells like earth after rain. But somehow better. He's not alone. Around the room, others are doing the same. Some dab resin onto sleeves, others gently waft smoke into their hair. You glance toward a corner and see a tiny, exquisitely carved box, open to reveal incense sticks, each labeled in delicate calligraphy. They aren't named like perfumes. They're named like poetry. Plum rain, evening cicada, cranes over water. You're not witnessing some pampered nobles at leisure. These are samurai bushi, warriors. But tonight, there are no clanging swords, no shouts of challenge. Just the soft hiss of incense meeting heat, the occasional cough politely stifled behind a sleeve. Historians still argue whether this nightly ritual served primarily spiritual or social purposes. Was it about purifying the soul before combat, or smelling respectable while sipping tea with your superior? The truth, like the smoke, likely curls between both. You sit quietly. You're not entirely sure you're allowed to be here, but no one's chased you off yet. The room is dim, but welcoming. A bell sounds gently in another room. Maybe someone's finished preparing a new blend. The entire space smells like patience, discipline, and a faint hint of expensive pine. Fun fact, samurai would often scent their helmets and underarmor with incense before battle. Not for vanity, not entirely. Part of it was ritual, yes, but also practicality. If they died, they wanted to smell good doing it. Apparently dying with honor also included not offending the noses of those who might be folding your kimono later. One figure across from you gently rubs a pellet of incense on his pulse points. He closes his eyes. You can't help but wonder if he's thinking of war, or love, or dinner. Maybe all three. By now you've noticed the air feels thick, but not stuffy. As if every breath you take is meant to slow your thoughts. There's a rhythm here, an inhaled silence. No one talks. Not because they're being secretive, but because here, in this room, scent speaks louder than words. You try to imitate them, hover your hand through the smoke. It's warmer than you expected, and somehow the smell sticks to your skin, like a polite ghost. One that might just follow you home. There's something mesmerizing about watching warriors treat scent with the same seriousness they apply to swordplay. Each movement is practiced, deliberate, One false note, and your blend goes from night forest to overcooked turnip. Of course, not every samurai had a nose for nuance. One old text tells the story of a young recruit who mixed too much musk with cinnamon and cleared out a meditation hall faster than a fire drill. Fringe or not, stories like that are passed down with affectionate mockery. But for those who mastered it, scent wasn't just a hobby. It was armor. You could enter a room and announce your presence without saying a word. You could calm nerves, distract rivals, or stir nostalgia with a single whiff. Samurai were taught to read a room's aroma as skillfully as they read a battlefield. You glance again at the glowing incense on the brazier. There's something hypnotic about how it curls upward, never quite in the same direction, like it knows secrets but won't tell. The silence continues, but now it feels companionable. You're starting to breathe in sync with the room. You wonder if they can smell your curiosity, if that's a thing. Can emotion cling to the air the same way sandalwood does? Outside, a breeze stirs the paper walls, bringing in the faintest whisper of night jasmine. Or maybe that's another incense someone just lit. You can't tell anymore where scent ends and imagination begins. Your knees are starting to ache a little. Sitting Caesar style isn't for the faint of heart or calves, but you don't dare shift too much. You're a guest, after all. And right now, you're being let in on something quiet and sacred. The samurai across from you finally opens his eyes. He looks at you, then looks at the incense. You nod. He nods. No words. You don't need any. You trail behind the young samurai as he rises his robe, catching the drifting smoke like a soft sail. There's no dramatic stride, no flaring music cue. Just the muffled pad of his tabi socks against polished floorboards. He smells faintly of cloves and something deeper amber, maybe. You've never smelled confidence before, but now you're fairly certain it has top notes. Outside, the night is cool. The moon is a quiet witness as you follow him down the narrow walkway that links the house to the inner courtyard. It's not a particularly grand estate, but the details speak volumes. Lacquered trim bamboo fencing, too elegant to keep anything out, except bad taste, and a courtyard stone lantern flickering like it's trying not to gossip. The samurai you follow is named Jiro. You gather this from a short exchange he has with a servant. No bows, just a mutual tilt of the head, and the word Jiro-sama. You're clearly not the only one tiptoeing through social protocol tonight. What's fascinating is how many doors open for him literally and figuratively. Not because he stomps around demanding respect. It's subtler than that. He glides through these spaces like a scent of vetiver in a silk sleeve, noticed, but not shouted. His presence is felt before he speaks, or perhaps before he even appears. Historians still argue whether such olfactory entrances were consciously cultivated or an organic product of culture. Was scent weaponized as social leverage, or simply a side effect of spending hours in incense circles? Maybe it's both. Either way, Jiro smells like someone with access. You follow him to a gathering, a poetry meeting, if you're translating the hushed tones and abundance of tea correctly. The guests all wear subtle hues, silk that whispers instead of rustles. There's a faint floral haze in the air, like someone bathed in peach blossoms and good intentions. No one announces Jiro. He doesn't need it. As he steps inside, several heads turn toward him slightly, just a few degrees, like flowers orienting toward the sun. Or maybe just to catch that scent again. He bows, murmurs something polite. Someone makes space on the tatami mat. You follow, and sit a respectful distance behind. No one seems to notice you're not supposed to be here, or maybe you already smell enough like cedar to pass as furniture. In this room, incense isn't just a garnish, it's a form of silent communication. You begin to notice patterns. The older gentleman to the left, clearly someone important, smells of bitter orange peel and polished leather. A younger man near the doorway wears a blend with sharp resinous edges, an ambitious scent, maybe a bit too eager. You suspect he's trying to climb more than the social ladder. Jiro, by contrast, smells like balance, warm and cool, soft and grounded. You wonder how long it took him to perfect it, or if someone taught him. Fun tidbit among the upper echelons of samurai society. Families often had signature incense blends, not just favorite perfumes, but heirloom recipes passed down, like katana blades. Knowing someone's scent meant knowing their clan. You could identify an ally or an enemy from a single breath. Take that business cards. A woman enters quietly and joins the group. She's regal in posture, but without the stiffness of someone trying too hard. Her scent is mesmerizing cherry bark paper white, a trace of roasted green tea. She greets Jiro with a nod that suggests history. Not romance, necessarily. Just recognition. Like two seasoned actors hitting their marks. The evening flows in a mix of short poems and long silences. Laughter is infrequent, but not absent. There's a rhythm to it all. You could call it elegant boredom, but that wouldn't be fair. It's more like disciplined leisure. The kind you can only afford when you're not dodging arrows or counting rice bowls. You watch Jiro respond to a poem with one of his own. His voice is steady, low. You catch words like drifting and pine and regret, but the meaning escapes you like, well, smoke. Still, the room nods approvingly. It's less about understanding and more about feeling. And scent carries a lot of feeling. There's a plate of seasonal sweets passed around confections, shaped like maple leaves and fish. You get one. It tastes faintly of plum and nostalgia. Historians still debate whether gatherings like this were formalized performance or genuine moments of relaxation. Were these samurai putting on an aesthetic display for power's sake, or did they actually enjoy the poetry, the incense, the stillness? Given how long everyone stays, you lean toward the latter. Power and peace are not always mutually exclusive, it seems. Eventually, the evening winds down. Not with any announcement, just a slow unfurling of body language. People begin to rise, murmuring farewells, and folding themselves back into anonymity. Jiro lingers. He says something to the woman from earlier. She replies with a smile that could be either gratitude or gentle sarcasm. Hard to tell in this light. You follow Jiro back to the house. He doesn't speak, but there's no tension. The silence is companionable. You can still smell the blend he wears, though it's faded slightly like a candle after it's blown out, still warm with memory. He returns to the incense tray, adds a new chip of wood. The smoke that rises now is spicier with hints of pine resin and citrus rind. A nighttime scent. For dreaming, maybe. Or for making sure your ghost smells better than your enemy's. You sit near the brazier again, careful not to knock anything over. The scent wraps around you like a second robe. You breathe in deeply. It smells like tradition, like intentionality, like someone cared enough to craft beauty in a world built on steel. You realize now this isn't perfume. This is presence. You're sitting on the edge of something ancient, something intricate. The next morning arrives not with a rooster, but with the soft clink of ceramics and the faint waft of sandalwood that never really left the air. Jiro is already awake, kneeling by a wooden case, lacquered black and inlaid with mother of pearl. The box opens like a secret revealing not weapons, but tiny tools, tweezers, folded paper packets, scent containers, and trays of fragrant wood chips, each one precisely labeled. He's preparing for a Kodo gathering. Kodo. The way of incense isn't just about sniffing nice things. It's a ritual, a game and art form so refined, it makes wine tasting look like a frat party. Imagine poker crossed with haiku, but everyone's high on fragrance instead of adrenaline. You watch as Jiro arranges each piece with surgical care. It's like watching a monk dress a god. Historians still argue whether Kodo began in earnest during the Heian period, or much later under Ashikaga influence. But one thing's for sure, it reached peak cultural snobbery among samurai elites, who had the time nose and funds to indulge. After all, this wasn't just incense. This was status. He offers you a seat beside him as he finishes arranging the game tools. The set includes a tiny censer curved like a boat charcoal ash, arranged in a perfect cone, and little mica plates to hold the chips. There's also a fan not for cooling, but for precisely wafting the scent without burning your eyebrows off. The rules. Well, there are dozens of variations, but today's version is simple and elegant. You'll be presented with several scents, one after another. Some will repeat. Your job is to identify which scent you've already smelled, just by memory. No pressure. The gathering itself happens in a room so quiet your heartbeat feels like a drum solo. Guests arrive in subdued elegance, many with their own incense fans tucked into sleeves. You notice how they greet each other, not with small talk, but with gentle bows and measured breaths, as though they're already tasting the air. Jiro kneels at the host's position and begins the ritual with a low, steady chant. You don't catch the exact meaning, but it sounds like a prayer wrapped in poetry. He lights the charcoal layers, the ash places the mica, and finally the first sliver of wood. A few seconds later, it begins smoke. That's barely smoke, more suggestion than substance, like a memory you're not quite sure is yours. The scent dances around the room, subtle and fleeting. Not aggressive, not perfumey, just precise. A tiny tray bearing the incense burner is passed from guest to guest. When it reaches you, you take the listening position, left hand under the tray, right cupping near your nose. You lean in, breathe. It smells like the edge of a forest just after rain, like moss-covered stone, warmed by the afternoon sun. Maybe like regret, if that had a scent. It's not dramatic. It's not even immediately pleasant, but it's alive. This is Monko listening to incense, not smelling. Listening. Because in Kodo, scent isn't static. It has mood, voice, narrative. You're not just sniffing. You're perceiving a story with no words. Historians still debate how much of this was philosophical layering and how much was just sensory pretension. But either way, there's no denying the depth of focus required. Samurai trained to notice the shift of wind on a battlefield applied that same attention to a wisp of fragrance on a silent afternoon. As the game continues, you listen to more scents. Some are sweet, some spicy. One makes you think of your grandmother's closet, though she definitely didn't live in feudal Japan. Another reminds you of candle wax and pine needles. Each chip is past appreciated and recorded. In secret, players jot down their guesses on slips of paper, folded with almost monastic care. You get one wrong. You're pretty sure you've smelled that woody floral blend before, but it turns out it was an imposter, a variant, a cousin in the aromatic family tree. Jiro notices your furrowed brow and offers a slight smirk. He's competitive but kind, and apparently much better at this than you. Fun tidbit. Many Kodo games had themes. One classic version Genjiko used 5 scents in combinations that echoed chapters of the tale of Genji. Players had to match their guesses not only by nose, but by literary inference. It was like Jeopardy for people who bathed in poetry and had excellent sinuses. The round concludes. Jiro announces the results. No applause, no jeering, just quiet nods and a few knowing smiles. The atmosphere is less winner takes all and more we shared a secret, didn't we? And what a secret it is. You begin to understand why samurai were drawn to this game, not just for beauty, but for discipline, for the way it trains, focus memory restraint. You can't brute force your way through Kodo. You can't cheat your nose. You have to slow down, trust your instincts, and engage completely. The final scent is offered not as part of the game, but as a parting gift. Jiro lights it, and lets the smoke rise gently as everyone prepares to leave. It smells like chrysanthemum and warm wood, familiar and unknowable all at once. As the room empties, you linger. The smoke is thinning now, curling lazily toward the ceiling. You breathe it in one last time and realize you've just played a game where victory doesn't matter, and the real prize is learning how to listen to something invisible. And that's oddly comforting. You stay behind after the Kodo gathering just long enough for the quiet to settle around you again, like dust that forgot to fall. The room smells like memory now, distant plums, old wood, something spicy left over from that final chip. You inhale deeply, trying to trap it somewhere behind your ribs. Jiro begins cleaning up the tools, with the same reverence he used setting them out. No rushing. No flicking ash like it's disposable. Each item is treated like an heirloom, which it probably is. The incense burner is wiped down with a square of silk. The mica plate goes into a velvet-lined pouch. Even the ash is sifted, reshaped, repurposed. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is casual. You help where you can, but mostly you stay out of the way and absorb. Today you're learning that scent is not just a pleasure, it's a performance, a sign, a soft flag waved in a silent war of elegance. Later that day, you're taken to a gathering of higher-ranking officials, daimyo ministers, maybe even someone from the shogunate. You're not introduced. You're background noise. But even in the background, you can smell ambition. The room is layered in fragrance like a palimpsest. You recognize a few of the blends from earlier sandalwood Kyara plum bark, but now they're amplified, sharpened or obscured with expensive additions. Clove, star anise, rare imported resins from Southeast Asia. These aren't just scents. These are social signals dressed up as perfume. Historians still debate whether these gatherings were consciously olfactory contests, or merely places where social hierarchy incidentally revealed itself through aroma. But what's clear is that forgetting your scent etiquette here would be like wearing flip-flops to a royal banquet. One particularly stern noble enters the room with a scent so commanding, it actually makes you blink. It's deep, resinous, and cold, like the inside of a temple where no one smiled in centuries. People shift slightly when he arrives, not out of fear, but respect. Scent-based respect, apparently. And then there's the opposite extreme. A younger man, clearly new to this level of politicking, walks in, wearing something so overpowering it practically slaps your sinuses. Over-sweetened cinnamon. Heavy musk. A nervous sweat blend trying way too hard. The room doesn't react outright, but you feel the ripple of polite discomfort, like an invisible fan's breeze. Fun tidbit in some accounts. Samurai would judge a man's refinement, not by his sword technique, but by the restraint in his fragrance. Too bold, and you were gauche. Too faint, and you were forgettable. The sweet spot. Subtle, but complex. The kind of scent that lingers after you leave, but never announces you when you enter. At this particular gathering, conversation flows like green tea, measured sometimes bitter, always refined. No one raises their voice. No one sweats. They discuss border skirmishes, grain shortages, poetry, the relative intelligence of a rival daimyo's falcon. You catch every 10th word and all of the mood. What you notice most is how scent becomes punctuation. A pause in conversation, a whiff of cloves, a joke met with a murmured laugh, a curl of camphor. Even disapproval has a smell, bitter citrus, slightly metallic, maybe deliberate, or maybe just your imagination getting carried away again. One guest stands and offers a poem. The words are elegant, but what follows is even more telling. He fans a bit of incense into the air, as if signing his verse with scent. The smoke rises slowly, carrying the memory of his words into the rafters. That's not just performance. That's branding. You begin to understand why scent mattered so much in a society built on subtlety. When every gesture counts, every pause means something, and every relationship is balanced on a blade of etiquette, your fragrance might say what your face cannot. A well-crafted scent could declare allegiance, hint at confidence, or soften a threat into something almost poetic. Historians still argue whether samurai truly believed scent could influence the outcome of negotiations, or if it simply made them feel more in control. But there's no doubt they invested time, energy, and a shocking amount of silver into getting it right. The woman from yesterday's poetry session arrives late, as is apparently her privilege. Her scent slices through the room like a poem dressed in silk. Everyone notices. No one comments. She takes her seat beside a scroll fans herself once, and settles in with the ease of someone who has never once overcooked a perfume. Your nostrils are tired. Did you know that's a thing? Scent fatigue is real. You wonder how anyone in this room can still distinguish burnt hinoki from spicy amber after an hour. But they do, with the same sharpness that lets them read an insult hidden inside a compliment. It's a form of literacy, a language of smoke and subtlety. The meeting winds down as such things do, no announcements, just a shift in weight, a few exchanged glances, the quiet snap of a folding fan. One guest leaves a parting scent behind warm vanilla and fading herbs. It lingers longer than he does. Back in Jiro's house, the quiet returns like an old friend. He offers you tea, and an odd-smelling sweet roasted sesame and yuzu probably. You eat it without asking questions. He doesn't speak, but you can tell he's pleased. Not because he gained anything politically, but because today he spoke without saying a word, and people listened. You wake to the scratchy warmth of woven tatami under your cheek, and the faint aroma of yesterday's incense still clinging to your clothes. Someone, probably Jiro, who has the tact of a shadow, folded a blanket over you in the night. The room is quiet, but not empty. A new day means new rituals. And today, Jiro has a lesson for you. He beckons you to a small room at the rear of the house. It's austere, even for a samurai. Just a low table, a paper screen painted with cranes, and a tray of tiny ceramic containers. You sit cross-legged, curious, and not entirely awake. Today, you're going to blend your own incense. There's something both terrifying and exhilarating about this. Like being handed a bow and arrow and told to aim at the moon, Jiro lays out the ingredients with the same precision he'd give to a suit of armor. Sandalwood clove, camphor benzoin, aloeswood cinnamon bark, and a mysterious brown powder he warns you not to taste. Historians still argue whether samurai actually composed their own incense, or simply memorized established recipes passed down through the generations. But personal blending certainly existed. Some left behind scrolls of formulas. Others kept their mixtures secret, like fragrance-obsessed alchemists. You pick up a sliver of sandalwood and sniff. Woody, sweet, clean. Safe. A good base. Next comes clove spicy, confident, a little bold. Camphor sharp and cold like pine needles on a frosty morning. The benzoin is sticky and sweet like vanilla with a smoky afterthought. It reminds you of old bookstores and dry leaves. And then there's the aloes wood. It smells like time itself. Deep, resinous, bitter sweet, like something sacred smuggled from another world, in a box carved from regrets. You pause, inhaling it again, unsure whether you like it or just respect it too much to decide. Jiro nods approvingly as you sort your ingredients into careful piles. He gives you a mortar and pestle. The grinding begins. It's harder than it looks. The resins stick. The woods splinter. The clove refuses to break down without putting up a fuss. Your arms start to ache. It feels like you're battling a very small, very stubborn forest. Eventually, you reduce the blend to a fine powder. Jiro hands you a drop of honeyed binder and instructs you to shape the mixture into a cone. You fumble through it. Your cone looks more like a melted snail, but he doesn't laugh. Much. Fun tidbit incense was often shaped into elegant forms, swirls, spirals, pressed sticks, depending on the occasion. The shape wasn't just aesthetic. It affected how the scent released. Faster, burn sharper scent. Slower, burn a gradual unfolding story. You set your snail cone on a mica plate and place it over the glowing charcoal. Nothing happens for a moment. And then smoke. A thin curl, hesitant at first, then steadier. You lean in. Breathe. It's not bad. Not amazing either. A little too heavy on the clove. But you can smell intent. It smells like someone trying to remember a dream while it's still slipping away. Or like a letter you wrote and never sent. Jiro says nothing, but he lights his own blend beside yours. The difference is immediate. His scent is layered, patient. It arrives in stages. First warmth, then sharpness, then something green and earthy that catches in your chest, like a pleasant sigh. His cone isn't just fragrance, it's a narrative. You realize that making incense is a lot like training for battle. It's about preparation, control, knowing how much of something is too much, where to press harder, where to ease off. It's an art, a weapon, a mirror. Historians still wonder whether incense blending was ever used strategically. Could a warrior customize a scent to unsettle an opponent or embolden allies? No evidence proves it definitively, but there are whispers. One tale speaks of a samurai who walked into battle, trailing a scent so strong and strange that enemies hesitated, unnerved by what they couldn't name. Jiro teaches you how to note the differences between scent layers. The initial hit the middle, bloom the lingering base. You try again, adjusting your proportions. This time you go lighter on the clove, heavier on the sandalwood, a whisper of cinnamon, a pinch of aloes wood. The result, better. Still clumsy, but warmer. Quieter, like the second draft of a letter, written with more honesty. The sun has climbed high by the time you finish your third blend. The air in the room is thick, not with smoke, but with stories. Scented ones. You realize you're learning more than a craft, you're learning a language, a new way of expressing what's too delicate to say out loud. You wonder if Jiro ever gifted incense blends as tokens. A silent apology. A scented confession. Did he ever leave a trail of a particular blend behind, like a breadcrumb path of emotional breadcrumbs? Probably. Before lunch he shows you one final thing, a scroll. It's old, its edges cracked like toast, but the ink is sharp. Recipes. Dozens. With names like Evening Apology, Arrow Through Fog, and 3 Autumns Ago. Each one is precise, down to the half pinch. You ask if these are family recipes. He nods once, and then he hands you a blank sheet of rice paper. Your turn. You think for a moment. Then you dip the brush and title your blend with something simple. Almost awake. Jiro smiles, and for a brief second you smell something new in the room, approval maybe, or roasted sesame. Hard to tell. After your morning lesson in the art of incense blending, your arms feel like they've been politely punched by a pillow full of cedar shavings. But there's no time to rest. Jiro is already moving with a different kind of precision, his robes now replaced with armor, his hair tied in a tighter knot. There's a different scent in the air, too. Not ceremonial, not poetic. It's battlefield incense. He beckons you silently, and you follow your footsteps echoing in a world that suddenly feels heavier. You notice the change immediately. The incense is sharper now, more astringent, like fresh pine snapped in half, or the ghost of an extinguished torch. It smells alert, awake, less meditation, more preparation. You trail him through the barracks, where other warriors are adjusting their gear, stretching out limbs, tying straps, nodding to each other with quiet focus. No war cries, no roaring. Just the calm, terrifying hush of men who know they might not come back, and yet there's incense burning at each doorway. Small bowls of glowing ash, thin curls of smoke drifting lazily around blades and armor. You'd expect sweat and steel. Instead, it smells like a temple preparing for a wedding and a funeral at once. Historians still debate the role incense played in battle prep, whether it was merely ritualistic, or whether the samurai genuinely believed certain blends sharpened the mind or steadied the nerves. One theory even suggests some warriors had battle blends tailored to help them achieve a particular emotional state, resolve clarity, fearlessness. Jiro lights a small cone of his own and sets it in the hollow of his helmet. You blink. That's not just sentiment, that's intentional. You're about to ask why, but he speaks first. In case I don't come back, he says quietly, I want them to remember the way I smelled. Oh, you don't ask any more questions after that. There's something strangely moving about the idea that in a world where death was often brutal, sudden and anonymous scent could be the one soft tether back to personhood. No matter how torn the armor, how unrecognizable the face, maybe someone would breathe in and whisper, that was Jiro. That was sandalwood and rainbark. That was him. Fun tidbit, some samurai believed incense purified not just the body, but the spirit, helping the soul pass into the next life more gracefully. Scent wasn't just a mask against blood or sweat. It was a final act of composure, of dignity. As you follow the group to the practice field, the scents shift again. One warrior wears a sharp blend of camphor and black pepper, bracing almost aggressive. Another smells like pine sap and faint rose, a surprising combination, somehow both fierce and mournful. The sparring begins. Not with wooden swords, but live blades dulled just enough to avoid tragedy. Jiro's movements are fluid, deliberate economic. There's no wasted flourish, just clean arcs and precise footwork. You watch from the sidelines, amazed, not just by the discipline, but by how calm it all feels. Like a dance, a deadly one, sure, but measured, controlled. You start to realize that this too is connected to the incense. Scent here isn't a distraction. It's part of the atmosphere, a pacing mechanism. When your world is full of edges and consequences, having something soft, silent, and invisible, anchoring you might be the only thing that keeps your hands steady. One sparring partner falters, loses rhythm steps wrong. The bout ends with a grunt and a shallow cut. The injured samurai huffs once, and then laughs. It's not the laugh of someone amused, more the sound of someone relieved to still be breathing. He's escorted away to a quiet corner where a healer tends the wound with gauze and, of course, incense. The scent lavender with a touch of bitter herbs. Calming. Clean. Efficient. Historians still argue whether incense had any real medicinal properties, or if it simply masked the overwhelming olfactory horror of blood and infection. But Japanese texts do reference antiseptic qualities in certain woods and resins, suggesting that at least some of the benefit wasn't purely psychological. By the time practice ends, the sun has begun to lower, and the air smells like effort, not sweat, not fatigue, just that odd blend of adrenaline and sandalwood. Jiro sits by a tree helmet beside him, the last trace of incense curling out from its lining. You sit next to him. He doesn't speak, but hands you a small pouch. Inside are 3 cones of incense, all identical. What's this one called, you ask? He shrugs just barely. Victory. Or mourning. I haven't decided. You both sit there quietly breathing in the scent. It's complicated. Not comforting, not quite. But rich. Deep. You can't tell if it's meant to embolden or to say goodbye. That's the thing about samurai incense. It never gives you easy answers. It just lingers long enough to make you ask better questions. A hawk screeches in the distance. Jiro stands and brushes off his robes. Practice is over. War may or may not come tomorrow. But tonight, he'll return home and burn another cone. And if he dreams of battle, it'll be laced with sandalwood. You rise, too suddenly aware that the scent from his helmet still clings to your sleeve, like a borrowed memory, or a warning, or a promise. You don't notice it at first, but once you do, it's impossible to ignore. The closer someone sits to the inner circle of power, whether it's the head of a household, a military commander, or a court advisor, the more their scent speaks for them, and the more deliberate it becomes. Jiro introduces you to this unspoken rule, one humid afternoon, as you accompany him into the house of a powerful daimyo. No trumpets, no titles announced, just a quiet room, a clack of sandals on stone, and the unmistakable aroma of something rich, old and cool aloes wood sharpened with a citrus edge. The scent greets you before the host does. This isn't just etiquette. It's a hierarchy made of molecules. As you kneel with the others, careful not to knock over the tray of sweets, you're supposed to pretend not to notice. You start decoding the room by scent, not sight, not speech. The man closest to the daimyo wears a subtle blend, smoky and grounded. Probably sandalwood with some kind of earthy base, maybe vetiver, though good luck getting anyone to confirm that. 2 seats further down, someone smells sharper younger. There's pine mint, even a whisper of camphor. His tone when he speaks a little louder, a little less refined. Historians still debate whether the hierarchy of scent in samurai culture was a formal system, or a series of social cues absorbed through proximity and repetition? Was there a ranked fragrance chart, like armor styles or kimono cuts? Or did everyone just know their place and blend instinctively? Like so many things in Japan's layered court etiquette, it's likely both. Jiro's own blend today is different from the one he used during Kodo. This one is less poetic, more polished. Incense as armor, not conversation. When he bows to the daimyo, you catch a breeze of faint clove and a darker resin commanding but respectful. It's a scent that knows how to speak second. Fun tidbit samurai robes, especially formal ones, were often stored with sachets of custom incense blends. Some families would even subtly scent their ceremonial documents. Imagine delivering a surrender letter that smelled faintly of roses and defeat. That's a power move. Conversation flows in layers. Not fast, not direct. Like a koi pond disturbed only by falling petals. Every word seems designed to be reread in memory later. Every gesture is deliberate, and every fragrance floating through the room has weight. You begin to understand that the daimyo doesn't just rule with strategy and soldiers. He rules with presence. And scent is a tool in that arsenal. Like lacquer on a blade or the fabric on a fan, it makes the message more precise. You realize that when this man walks through a garden, flowers probably move aside out of respect. The woman beside him, maybe a wife or consort, wears a scent you can't identify. It's neither floral nor spicy. Something oceanic, almost like wind across rocks. You have no idea what it is, but it makes your teeth ache slightly. She barely speaks, but when she does, everyone leans forward just a bit more than necessary. There's an unspoken game going on here. No cards, no dice, just diplomacy carried on currents of incense. When someone proposes a treaty, another answers with a carefully measured silence, and a little extra fan to stir their personal scent forward. You can almost hear the sentence beneath it. Smell that's restraint. That's power held back. Historians still argue whether fragrance preferences shifted according to political fashion, much like fabrics or court poetry styles. Some believe certain woods became symbolic: sandalwood for purity, Kiera for enlightenment, clove for ambition. Others say it was entirely individualistic, and that the samurai simply followed their noses wherever status led. Eventually, refreshments are served tiny cups of tea, so delicate you feel like sneezing might shatter them. The daimyo's servant brings out a small incense burner, different from the kodo trays. This one is shaped like a mountain, with a curl of smoke pouring from the top. Everyone watches the plume as if it's giving a sermon, and maybe it is. As the meeting wraps, you follow Jiro into the garden. The moment you cross the threshold, the scents change. Less curated, more natural. Wisteria, wet moss, a hint of citrus from some unseen fruit tree. But beneath it all, you still smell the daimyo's aloes wood blend, clinging faintly to your sleeves. Like smoke that refuses to forget you. Jiro says nothing, but you sense approval in his silence. You didn't speak out of turn. You didn't fidget. And you didn't sneeze during the incense display. You're practically a diplomat now. You ask him if these sense signals are ever weaponized, used to shame or embarrass someone. He gives a small shrug. There's a reason no one wears plum blossom anymore, he says. You don't ask why, but now every time you pass someone in the courtyard, you pay attention. Not to what they wear, not to what they say, but to what follows them when they leave. The hierarchy here isn't built on volume or title. It's built on subtlety. And in a world where everything matters, what you smell like, might be the loudest thing about you. You're walking behind silk slippers, now quieter steps, but no less calculated, no less. Jiro is taking you somewhere different today. Not the barracks, not the Kodo chamber. Somewhere softer, quieter. You smell it before you see it. The hallway narrows, the screens grow more ornate, and a faint fragrance leads the way. Plum blossom rice powder, and something faintly sweet, like millen caught in a silk pouch. You're entering the women's quarters. Jiro says little, only that you're here to observe, and to listen, though not with your ears. He steps aside as a woman approaches, poised, unsmiling, composed like a scroll, written in delicate brushstrokes. This is Lady Itsuko. She's no war general. But make no mistake, she commands a battlefield. Her kimono ripples with stitched clouds and cranes. But what reaches you first, long before the silk or the glance, is her scent. It is devastating, not overwhelming, not aggressive. It's the kind of fragrance that arrives like a memory familiar, but just out of reach. Itsuko passes, and the air seems reluctant to stop holding her. You follow. Inside her chambers, the light is softer filtered through slatted screens. There are no swords here, but the same precision. Incense burners shaped like lotus buds sit beside lacquered combs and mirrored boxes. Servants move with a grace that feels choreographed, even when they're just pouring tea. This is not a world without power. It's just power expressed in scent, gesture, and silence. Historians still puzzle over the daily routines of court women in samurai households, where they can find symbols or quiet strategists behind the scenes. But diaries and poetry suggest they were masters of influence, and often that influence arrived perfumed. Lady Itsuko sits beside a small brazier and selects a stick of incense with delicate fingers. She doesn't glance your way, but you know she's aware of your presence. Everyone in this house always is. She lights the incense, and the scent begins to bloom a rich floral cut, with something sharp like a secret held too long, too. You sit quietly. This isn't Kodo. There are no games, no guesses. This is something more intimate, more dangerous somehow. Fun tidbit noblewomen often scented their hair with custom incense blends by hanging it in rooms thick with smoke. A sort of passive perfuming, no spritzing, no dabbing, just slow, elegant absorption. And since hair was considered a sensual and symbolic feature, a well-scented mane could be the emotional equivalent of a sonnet. A young attendant steps forward and offers you a scroll. It's poetry written in Itsuko's hand. You can tell by the ink strokes crisp but graceful. The lines are full of moonlight plum trees aching glances across bridges. And beneath the paper a scent lingers. She has perfumed the scroll. Not heavily, just enough to leave a whisper. You wonder what it says. Not the words, the scent. Is it a Dare A warning, or just her version of signing her name? Lady Itsuko speaks at last only a few words, but they float through the incense, like carefully placed flowers. Jiro responds with a nod. You realize this isn't a casual visit. This is negotiation, and the battlefield today smells like lotus and jasmine. You notice now that every woman in the room wears a different blend, not competing exactly, more like musical notes in a chord. One is grassy herbal grounding, another sharp and citrusy, a third so faint you have to lean in to catch it, amber maybe, or powdered green tea. Their scents are as much part of their identity as their voices. Historians still argue how these women wielded influence. Some suggest they used fragrance to stir emotion, imprint memory, and even manipulate moods. The line between affection and strategy was often scented with camellia and cedar. The conversation drifts to a marriage proposal. Someone's cousin or daughter or niece. Itsuko lifts her fan and hides her face. But her scent changes. She's fanned it just enough to release more of the blend. You feel it hit you sweet, clinging, nostalgic. Like something beautiful that might turn bitter. No one comments, but everyone hears it. You realize then that in this world, a woman's scent wasn't just decoration. It was vocabulary, a paragraph, a sigh, a decision, and sometimes a dagger. One of the younger women beckons you toward a writing table. She lifts a carved box and shows you her incense stash, tiny chips and powders wrapped in silk and paper. She points to her favorite and gestures for you to try it. It smells like roasted barley and morning rain. Earthy, quiet, unexpected. You nod, and she grins. A small rebellion, maybe. Not every scent here is soft. Not every woman gentle. But each one wields her incense with the same care a warrior applies to his blade. You leave the chamber as the sun begins to dip. The hallway seems longer now, thicker with perfume and meaning. Jiro says nothing, but his eyes say you've seen something important. You still smell like Lady Itsuko's scroll. And you probably will for days, which, depending on who smells you next, could mean anything. Evening creeps across the wooden beams of the temple, as slowly as moss over stone. You follow Jiro along a quiet garden path, lit only by the fading gold of the sky and the occasional flicker of a paper lantern. The air here is different, cleaner, sharper, but also heavier, like it remembers more than it should. And there just before the entrance, a monk seated cross-legged on a worn mat, waving smoke gently toward a stone statue, with one hand, while balancing a tray of incense pellets with the other. Welcome to the stillness. The temple smells nothing like the house, nothing like the barracks. It isn't layered or curated. It's elemental. You smell cedar ash, river water, and underneath it all that slow burning heart of aloes wood, like the earth whispering its old name. This is the Zen heart of scent. Inside, there's no ceremony, not in the way you're used to, just the act of being. Jiro bows deeply to the monk, deeper than you've seen him bow to any general. You follow suit, and feel the air change around you, as if the room itself has acknowledged your posture. The monk invites you to sit without speaking. He gestures to a small burner. You watch as he places a single chip of incense atop a glowing plate. It doesn't smoke at first. It just warms. And then, like a breath held too long, it exhales. It smells like time. No sweetness. No spice. Just something warm and deep and patient. You realize this isn't incense for pleasure. This is incense for presence. Historians still puzzle over the relationship between Zen practice and incense. Was it a remnant of older, more ornate Buddhist rituals, or something the monks embraced deliberately for meditation's sake? Either way, it's clear that here, incense isn't about identity or beauty. It's about letting go. Jiro sits in Seiza perfectly still. You do your best, but after about 5 minutes, your ankles start to whisper threats. Still, you try, because the monk hasn't moved in at least 20. There are no chants, no sermons, just the slow tick of breath, and the way the scent drifts upward, looping into space, and then disappearing like it was never there. The world narrows to this wood-grain breath and smoke. The monk finally speaks, but not in riddles. He says simply, "When the scent is strong, the mind wanders. When it is faint, the body resists. So find the place between." You blink. That's either the clearest instruction you've ever received, or the most elegant way to say figure it out yourself. Jiro opens one eye just enough to glance at you and smirks. Fun tidbit, some monks reportedly used incense as a form of timekeeping during meditation. They'd know how long to sit, based on how much of the incense had burned. A fragrant hourglass made of patience and fire. You try to focus again to stay in that space, between wandering and resistance. You let the scent do what it wants, guide or vanish. And somewhere in that haze, your thoughts slow. The room softens. You see a spider web in the corner, perfectly geometric. You hear the soft hiss of wind passing through old trees. You remember your grandmother's laugh. You forget why you were thinking of your grandmother in the first place. You think maybe you're falling asleep sitting up. And then the monk claps once. Sharp, quick, gentle but jarring. The spell breaks. The incense chip has finished burning. Jiro stands, slowly bows again, and waits for you. Your legs crack like old wood, but no one comments. Outside, the sky has turned the color of stone ink. The monk hands you a small pouch before you leave. Inside are 5 tiny chips of incense, each wrapped in rice paper, and labeled only with brushstrokes that might as well be clouds. You'll never know their names. But you're told to burn one the next time you forget how to be still. You wonder how often you'll need to do that. Historians still argue whether incense was meant to heighten awareness or erase ego. Was the scent a companion to meditation or a distraction cleverly disguised as virtue? But walking away from that temple, you think maybe it's neither. Maybe it's just a mirror, one made of smoke. Jiro doesn't speak on the way home. He doesn't need to. The silence carries more than words could. And besides, the scent of that last chip still clings to your sleeves, to your hair, to your breath. It smells like nothing and everything, all at once. Back at the house, the brazier is cold. For once, no incense is burning. The room smells only of wood paper and wind. You sit quietly with Jiro by the window, watching the clouds drift past the moon. You're not sure if you're thinking or just being. Either way, it feels right. You wake to the soft creak of a floorboard and the rustle of parchment. Jiro is already at work, seated beside a wooden trunk, lacquered black and trimmed in iron. It's not armor inside, not weapons or scrolls of war. It's letters, and every one of them smells like something. He notices your curiosity and gestures for you to come closer. The trunk is filled with correspondence, folded parchment wrapped in string sealed with wax, some marked with clan crests, others blank, but none are scentless. He pulls one at random and passes it to you. As you untie the string and open it, a ghost of pine and citrus lifts into the air like a long-lost sigh. This, it seems, is the world of scented scrolls letters that spoke before they were even read. Historians still argue whether this practice was merely a courtly flourish or something more functional. Could coded scents have been used for clandestine messages, or was it all aesthetic, a luxurious embellishment in an era where beauty was power? You lean into the next scroll. This one smells like violet and burned tea leaves. A strange pairing. The letter inside is brief, a poem, or maybe a veiled apology. You're not entirely sure. But the scent makes it feel heavier than the words alone. Jiro hands you another. This one is charred slightly at the edges. A failed message, or a warning. The scent here is sharper clove, perhaps with a bitter undertone. You wonder if the person who received this ever got the chance to read it, or if the smoke told them all they needed to know. You ask him were certain scents used to represent emotions. Love, betrayal, loyalty. He nods once, then holds up a small square of silk, no letter inside, just scent. Camphor, and something animalic like old musk. He doesn't explain what it means, and you don't press. Some secrets aren't yours to open. Fun tidbit samurai particularly, those trained in poetry and court life, were known to carry scent sachets tucked into their robes. Some even soaked their stationery in signature blends, so their presence could be felt miles away. In the right hands or sleeves, scent was an identity. You dig deeper into the trunk and find something unexpected, a game board. Made of thin wood and silk cords, it resembles kodo tools, but with a twist. Jiro opens a smaller box and removes tiles each labeled with a scent name and a single kanji character. It's an incense-based cipher, a game of perfume and secrets. Jiro explains in clipped phrases that this was once used among allies. Each scent represented a concept: loyalty, danger, invitation. The right combination of chips on a board could send a message without a single word if you knew the code. Historians are still piecing together whether these games were playful or deeply political. One surviving text describes a daimyo who arranged a scent letter composed entirely of incense chips, each delivered in a pouch to 5 different recipients. Only when combined did the message become clear, an order to rise against a rival. You test the game with Jiro. He gives you 3 chips, sandalwood ambergris, and a dried cherry blossom petal. You arrange them unsure. He rearranges them without a word. You smell it again. Now it says, "I remember you." Not literally, but something in the way those scents overlap. The sweetness caught in the base of the wood, the breath of something alive hiding under musk. It hits you unexpectedly, like nostalgia for a day you didn't live. He smiles faintly. You're learning. You wonder how many times a message was misunderstood because of a missed scent or a misremembered one. How many alliances crumbled because a chip was swapped or burned too quickly. In a world of silence and smoke, a breeze could change everything. You come across a small leather pouch inside the trunk. Inside half-burned incense chips, tiny crescent-shaped remnants wrapped in linen. Each one bears a smudge of ink. Names, dates. You don't ask. You already know these are memory pieces. Moments someone chose to keep not in words, but in what they once smelled like. You're beginning to understand, for the samurai memory was multi-sensory. History wasn't just what was written, but what lingered in the folds of your sleeve. You didn't just send a letter, you sent a trace of yourself, something the reader would breathe in and remember. Jiro replaces the scrolls one by one, folding them like laundry from another life. He handles the pouch, last, pressing it closed with care. Then he places the board game on top and shuts the lid. He doesn't lock it, because scent is already a kind of key. Later in your own quiet space, you light one of the temple chips the monk gave you. The scent is soft, layered, meditative. You breathe it in and feel your mind drift not to battle or poetry, but to parchment ink, and the idea that sometimes the most honest thing you can say doesn't need words at all, just smoke. The shogun's court is quieter than you expect. Not in volume. There are enough silk-clad officials and fans fluttering to generate a low, steady hum, but in something deeper. A stillness that suggests everything here is both rehearsed and inevitable. You followed Jiro through barracks and temples, gardens and incense chambers, but this is something else entirely. You don't enter through the front. No one like you does. Instead, you move with Jiro through a side corridor, lined with painted panels and guards, who smell faintly of oiled leather and sharp myrrh. Even the security here wears curated fragrance. Not for vanity, for presence. When you finally arrive, it's not to a throne or a grand chamber, but a long hall with woven mats, slanted sunlight, and an incense burner the size of a watermelon resting on an engraved iron stand. The smoke is already rising in a soft, continuous plume. It smells layered, shifting first clove, then sandalwood, then something rarer, something expensive. You smell Chiara, the most prized of all incense woods. It's deep and elusive, warm like polished amber, but dry like parchment left in the sun. Just a whisper of it in the air could command attention. Which is the point. Today's gathering isn't for war or poetry or religious observance. It's for kodo, but elevated. This is the incense ceremony at court, not the friendly guessing games in back rooms, but a ritualized competition of olfactory excellence. Here, scent is diplomacy. One misplaced note, one overly bold blend, and you may as well have slapped someone with your fan. Jiro doesn't compete, but he's an invited observer. You sit behind him, positioned perfectly out of the way and within range of the smoke. The first participant steps forward, bowing so deeply you're surprised he doesn't fall forward into the brazier. He places a chip on the mica plate just as you've seen before, but here, every motion is timed, watched, judged. The scent rises grassy, peppery, slightly bitter. It takes a few seconds to register. Then the judges nod subtly. You catch the faintest smirk from one noble seated to the side. Apparently, that was a safe play. Next up, a younger woman's sleeves embroidered with cranes, her fingers steady. She chooses a darker chip. The smoke is richer, like molasses over burning bark. You catch a wave of plum and roasted fig. It fills the room just enough, but not too much. And then, the moment everyone's waiting for the senior judge seated just below the shogun's emblem, unwraps a small scroll and reads out the round's theme. Echoes of snowfall. Yes, that's the actual theme. You stifle a cough. Fun tidbit incense ceremonies often carried poetic names, meant to guide scent choices toward particular emotions, seasons, or literary allusions. Evening crane, regretful lantern wind from an empty shore. It wasn't just a smell. It was a feeling. If you made people smell a memory, they didn't know they had you won. The next round begins. Each participant steps forward, presenting a blend they claim embodies snowfall, not the event, but the echo of it. That lingering cold, that hush, that aftertaste of winter. Historians still argue whether these ceremonies were sincere artistic pursuits or elaborate rituals for displaying status. Were participants genuinely invested in olfactory expression, or just using the ceremony as a ladder to court favor? Either way, the stakes feel real. One blend is too warm, another too sharp. You can see it on the judges' faces, a narrowing of the eyes, a tilt of the head. One woman actually covers her nose with her fan. That's basically the olfactory version of a duel challenge. And then someone nails it. A blend so faint you almost miss it. At first, there's barely anything at all. But then, it's their cold linen distant pine, and something so soft and dry it feels like breathing in a snowflake before it lands. You blink. Everyone else blinks too. The judge doesn't smile. He simply writes something on his slate and passes it to the next. No applause, just silence. The best kind. You glance at Jiro. He doesn't show much, but you catch the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. Approval. As the ceremony winds down, participants leave small gift bundles behind, not gold or cloth incense chips sealed in wax paper labeled only with brush strokes and metaphors. You wonder if they're tokens of friendship or veiled jabs. You rise to go, but one of the servants taps your sleeve and hands you a parcel. No name, no markings, just a subtle floral scent leaking through the wrapping. Inside is a single incense chip shaped like a falling leaf, and a card that reads, "You were there, weren't you?" You look at Jiro. He shrugs. "Smells like intrigue," he says dryly. Outside the court, the air feels heavier, not from heat, but from meaning. You walk slowly, still carrying the scent of Kiara in your sleeves. It's not just fragrance. It's reputation, memory, proof you were present. And tomorrow, when this smoke is gone, someone will still remember you by how you smelled. The scent of the court still clings to your hair as you trail behind Jiro down a narrow street that smells nothing like diplomacy. Gone are the lacquered beams and ceremonial incense burners. Here it's soot sea salt, wet stone, and fried dumplings. Welcome to the merchant quarter. The city breathes differently here, loudly, noisy carts shouting vendors, and somewhere a rooster that refuses to accept its afternoon. Jiro moves with purpose, weaving through the crowd, until he stops in front of a plain wooden storefront with no sign, only a faint ribbon of sandalwood curling from a lantern-shaped vent above the door. Inside, everything is different. Silence returns. So does the scent. Not overpowering, not decorative, just present. The air smells like a library of forgotten spices and unspoken pacts. Shelves stretch floor to ceiling lined with drawers labeled in kanji Latin, and sometimes, not at all. You've entered the world of the incense artisan. A woman appears from behind a curtain no older than 30, but with the eyes of someone who has smelled too many things to ever be surprised again. She nods to Jiro, barely acknowledging you, which seems fair. You probably reek of aristocratic incense and nervous sweat. She hands Jiro a package wrapped in palm fiber sealed with wax. No words exchanged. Business as usual. Then she looks at you and tilts her head. "Let's test your nose. No pressure." She leads you to a low table, sets down 4 incense chips, and lights one at a time. No fanfare. No Kodo rules. Just scent. The first is bright and citrusy, almost lemon, but sharper. The second sweet like honeyed almonds, but with an afterkick of what might be black pepper. The third, oh, that's trouble. Deep musky, leathery, with something smoky hiding in the background, like a pirate's journal dipped in resin. The last one you hesitate on. It smells complicated, warm and bitter, like cinnamon left out in the rain, or cloves stewed in regret. The artisan watches you like a cat watches a moth. She finally speaks. Sumatran benzoin Cambodian, Oud Sichuan pepper oil, and Chinese cassia bark. You passed. You're not sure what test you passed, or what the reward is, but she seems satisfied. Jiro murmurs something to her in a dialect you don't catch. She grunts, disappears behind the curtain, and returns with a rolled scroll and a sliver of shimmering wood wrapped in silk. "Kiara," she says without reverence, but you feel it anyway. This isn't the polished form burned at court. This is raw import, rare, dark, veined like petrified thunder. One sliver costs more than a horse, maybe more than you, and it's just sitting there on the table like a pebble. Fun tidbit, the best Kiara came through maritime trade routes from Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Indonesia. Samurai families with deep pockets and deeper ambitions often had exclusive deals with merchants to supply these woods. Sometimes the scent wars were fought far beyond Japan's shores by sailors, smugglers, and storms. Historians still argue whether Japan's incense culture could have developed so richly without foreign trade. Some claim the influence of Indian Buddhist incense brought with it centuries of olfactory wisdom. Others point to Chinese perfumery and herbal medicine as foundational. Either way, the mix was never purely domestic. The samurai nose had global roots. You follow the artisan as she shows you crates of imported materials, sandalwood from Mysore Star, anise from Fujin, even rare ambergris chunks wrapped in wax cloth. Some of the labels are scratched out. Not everything here was obtained with receipts. You wonder if some incense trails carry the scent of conflict or secrecy, if sandalwood ever rode alongside swords. The artisan pauses beside a bundle of twisted roots wrapped in tar-stained hemp. This one, she says, was paid for in gold and blood. You don't ask for the story. She wouldn't tell you anyway. But when she lights a chip of it, the room fills with a smell that is somehow both ancient and alive, like lightning trapped in bark. It doesn't even rise like normal smoke. It hovers, then sinks, as if refusing to leave the earth again. Jiro nods. Not in approval, but recognition. Later, she hands you a bundle. Beginner's kit, she says without a trace of irony. Inside powdered sandalwood, a pinch of clove, a sliver of agarwood, and a note written in clean, sharp brushstrokes. Don't blend until you've listened. You leave the shop feeling like you've taken something without fully understanding it. Not stolen, just borrowed with the silent expectation that you'll come back one day with better questions. Outside the street, noise crashes into you again. But now every scent you pass feels charged. The grilled fish, the rice wine, the dusty robes of a passing pilgrim, all suddenly layered complex. Stories waiting to be deciphered. You look at Jiro. He says nothing. Just walks, the way people do when they know exactly where to go, even if the path smells unfamiliar. And you're still holding that sliver of Chiara. You haven't burned it. Not yet. The morning is solemn. The sky carries a hush with it, the kind that silences even the crows. You walk behind Jiro, not toward court, nor dojo, nor garden, but to the edge of the village, where a small temple sits on a hill, wrapped in mist and mourning bells. Today is for death. Not a warrior's death in glorious battle, not a whispered political vanishing, but something slower, more human. A respected elder of Jiro's clan has passed, and in this world, death has its own scent. You notice it first. Before you see anything, the air smells of white sandalwood and chrysanthemum. There's no smoke yet, but the incense is close, folded into every robe, every breath, every bowed head. Even the trees seem to lean in reverence. Inside the temple, the family kneels quietly before the altar. The room is filled with offerings, fruits, folded cranes, calligraphy on paper so delicate it trembles in the breeze, and incense burners. 3 of them, each shaped differently, one like a lotus, one like a turtle, and one surprisingly like a plain pebble. Jiro explains softly, 1 for the body, 1 for the soul, 1 for the memory, and all 3 burn. The scents don't compete. They layer. One rises with sweetness, one clings with depth, and one drifts, like longing with nowhere to go. It's the last one that catches in your throat. Historians still debate whether samurai funeral rituals were deeply spiritual or simply cultural scripts performed with precision. But incense was always part of it. Not for masking, not for spectacle, but for farewell. Jiro kneels beside the widow and offers his incense chip. He places it into a small brazier, with 2 hands never looking up. The smoke begins slowly, like it needs permission. Then it unfurls smooth, gray, and certain. You're handed a chip, too. There's no guidebook here. No how to mourn with incense for beginners. You do what feels right. Kneel, breathe. Place the chip gently and watch it fade. The scent is warm and faintly spicy. It smells kind. That's the only word that fits. A monk begins chanting. The tones are low and steady like waves lapping against a familiar shore. The incense thickens. The air begins to shift, less a room now, more a memory made of paper and fire. You sit for what feels like hours, and then a change. The funeral pyre is prepared outside. The body wrapped in white is carried out. The incense burners go with it, placed at the 4 cardinal points. North for memory, east for the rising soul, south for the body's release, west for what waits. The scent outside is stronger now. Wind meets smoke. You feel it wrap around your clothes, your face, your thoughts. Fun tidbit samurai funerals often included incense, not just for the deceased, but for the mourners to guide the living back to clarity. Some houses kept specific blends, only for death rites passed down like family swords, but burned only when partings came. You stand beside Jiro as the fire is lit. There is no wailing, no shouting, just the crackle of flame and the slow, dignified swirl of smoke. Historians argue over how much personal incense preference influenced death rites. Did the deceased request their favorite scent, or did the family choose what was proper? Perhaps both. Or perhaps what lingered afterward, the scent left on robes and letters on altars, became the truest remembrance. Later, back at the house, Jiro sits alone with a small brazier and a fresh cone. The blend is different. Soft. Familiar. You recognize sandalwood, yes, but also a touch of rice powder, a thread of cherry blossom. It was hers, he says. You nod, unsure whether to speak. You don't. You sit beside him. You both listen to the incense. And now you understand something. In this culture, in this life built on steel and silent scent, is the vocabulary of letting go. It comforts where language fails. It honors when emotions can't be shown. It tells the departed, you are known. You will be missed. And maybe, just maybe, it tells the living, you're still here. The smoke curls upward. Neither of you watch it disappear. You wake the next morning to a breeze that smells like fried octopus, old newspapers, and bus exhaust. Wait. No, it's cedar again. Your mind's just playing tricks. You've spent so long tracing smoke trails in feudal Japan that when you finally step into modern Tokyo, the contrast hits like a taiko drum to the ribs. Yes, you've time-traveled. Just roll with it. Jiro is gone. His world sealed back into the soft grain of sandalwood. But his legacy, oh, it lingers. And it shows up in the strangest places. You're walking down Takeshita Street in Harajuku now, where teenagers dressed like anime came to life. And vending machines sell everything from canned bread to emotional damage. Amid the visual chaos, something catches your nose. A man passes, dressed sharply, AirPods and zero eye contact, but his cologne, a whisper of agarwood. You turn your head, but he's already gone. The scent hangs in the air like a wink from history. Modern Japanese perfumery doesn't shout, it insinuates. And the DNA of the samurai's fragrance rituals is still baked into it. Subtle, respectful complex. Even now, many high-end Japanese fragrances are built around restraint, with top notes that barely breathe, before dissolving into calm woods, muted florals, or smoky whispers. Historians might say it's coincidence. Cultural drift. You'd say Jiro's still around. You stop into a small fragrance boutique tucked between a bubble tea shop and a cosplay cafe. It's sleek, all chrome and blonde wood. The sales associate greets you with a bow and a brochure titled Scents of the Warrior. No kidding. The collection includes names like Kiara Shadow Sandal Eclipse and Plum Blossom Blade. Each perfume comes with a poetic card that could have been pulled straight from the Shogun's incense circle. One even lists its ingredients like a kodo recipe, hinoki wood kinam aud powdered clove, and a top note of iced lotus. You test a few. One smells like the inside of a calligraphy studio on a rainy day, another like distant thunder over pine-covered hills. A third, your favorite smells like a hug from someone who left a decade ago. Fun tidbit, the modern Japanese fragrance industry often collaborates with kodo masters to design high-end blends. And there's an entire subculture of collectors who chase rare Chiara wood the way wine snobs hunt 200-year-old Bordeaux. But it doesn't stop at perfume bottles. You duck into a manga shop and flip open a random volume. A panel shows a female warrior burning incense before a duel, her opponent visibly rattled. Another page, an elegant villain leaves behind a scented glove at the crime scene identified not by fingerprint, but by the unmistakable trail of sweet moss and regret. You smile. Anime and manga, always dramatic, always a little unhinged, have preserved this old language of scent in stylized form. But underneath the neon hair and sword umbrellas, the code remains the same presence, memory identity. Even J-pop idols get in on it. You stumble across a magazine ad featuring a boy band dressed in stylized samurai armor, each holding a different incense blend. The tagline, "Which scent will you carry into battle?" Subtle, no. Effective, definitely. Historians argue whether modern Japan truly honors its scent history or simply repackages it for trend cycles. But when you walk into a Kyoto tea shop and smell aloes wood burning behind the counter, or hear a salaryman describe his favorite cologne as quiet, you know the answer's somewhere in between. You pass a vending machine labeled Kodo Capsules. It offers single-use incense experiences, meditation break, cherry blossom, memory post-argument, calm. Each one contains a sealed cone and instructions on how to listen to the scent. You roll your eyes. You also buy 3. Later you sit on a park bench, burn one behind your travel mug, and close your eyes. The smoke rises slowly, like it always does. There's sandalwood, and memory, and the quiet assurance that someone somewhere once took the time to craft beauty in a violent world. That's the thing about samurai scent. It was never just about smell. It was about legacy, and even in a world of bullet trains and carbon fiber umbrellas, it lingers, soft, invisible, but unmistakable. You return to that quiet room one last time. Not the court, not the barracks, not the temple. Just a place that exists somewhere between them all. A space that smells like everything you've passed through: sandalwood, plum blossom, smoldering paper, and the kind of stillness that carries memory on its back like a sleeping child. Jiro is waiting. There's no ceremony now, no guests, no incense games, just a single brazier and 2 small cushions like old friends, settling in for one last story. He lights a cone, not one of the fancy ones from the merchant district, not a rare Kayara sliver, but something humble, warm, faint, something you recognize. You sit. You don't ask what it's called, because you already know. This is the scent of farewell. He offers you tea in a ceramic cup that's cracked at the rim, but still whole. You sip it quietly. Outside, wind moves through the garden. A tree stirs. Somewhere a bell rings. The incense curls up slowly, slower than usual, as if it knows you're watching. The scent is layered but gentle wood smoke softened with powdered rice. Something floral beneath it. Maybe Not enough to name. Just enough to remember. Jiro doesn't speak, but his silence says everything. The way you've walked beside him through rooms of power, grief, stillness, and story has changed you. And now, at the end, the only thing left to offer is a scent that needs no explanation. Historians might one day write about these customs, how scent shaped diplomacy, memory grief. They'll debate the meanings, the hierarchies, the fragments passed down. But they'll never capture this moment. The shared silence, the quiet breathing, the trace of incense hanging just above the edge of what you can name. Because this isn't history now. This is you. You've become part of it. Jiro finally stands. He bows not deeply, not formally, just enough. You bow back. The smoke curls between you. He leaves. You stay. You close your eyes and the world fades to breath and memory and scent. The room grows dimmer now. The smoke from the final cone softens, no longer curling, but hovering. The scent slows, stretching into long, warm threads that wrap gently around the edges of your thoughts. Outside, the shoji screen night thickens, cradling the garden in blue shadows and silver silence. You sit very still. Your breath comes slower, deeper. You notice the texture of the tatami under your hands, the faint creak of the floorboards beneath your folded legs, the distant sound of water, maybe a fountain or a stream you imagined earlier and never quite forgot. The incense continues to burn now, in its final moments. Its scent grows quieter, no longer asking anything of you. It doesn't need to be interpreted, remembered, or labeled. It just is. A soft presence. A goodbye without words. Let your shoulders sink now. Let the weight of all those stories melt off you, like robes being gently folded for the night. Let your mind drift through sandalwood forests, temple bells and tea bowls, left to cool in the evening air. You've traveled far tonight, not across land, but across time, across scent, across memory. And now it's time to rest. So let the smoke dissolve. Let the stillness bloom. Let the last flicker of incense whisper you into dreams. You are safe. You are still. And you are scented in story.